Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Paw. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the fourth box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the fourth box. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another week of the fourth box. First time in a couple weeks that it's been just you and I, Pops, but we always like to have these episodes too to just kind of touch base with, what's going on. And as always, there's always a lot to talk about. So I'm excited to see what we get into tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And you can't believe it's a week already since you were here, and we were in the same studio as we entertained our guest a week ago already. It just seems to have flown by. I know you had a real busy day welcoming a new puppy to your home, so that's exciting news.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a new fourth box patriot in the house here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, new addition to the family. Well, I want to also extend greetings to all of our friends and patriot families around the country that tune in to hear us. Welcome to the fourth box studio, tucked away safely here in our virtual Buckman Tavern. It's a place where patriots gather. And we are certainly looking forward to having a discussion about some of the activities going on in the country and around the world tonight. And before we get started, I want to raise my glass. Again, tonight I have several events and persons that I'm raising my glass to. First and foremost, as we look forward to the 4th of July, a holiday that is oftentimes spent with family and friends and celebrating and fireworks. And I think oftentimes it is overlooked why we have a holiday on the 4th of July, and to commemorate the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And I want to salute, there were 5 people that were kind of selected as a committee, and it really came down to Thomas Jefferson, but John Adams was really an instrumental figure in pushing for independence, and he was on that small committee, as was Ben Franklin and 2 others. But Thomas Jefferson, the primary author, and I certainly am raising my glass to those folks who put their neck on the line to pen that document and state our intentions, are the colonists here in the United States' intention to separate from the homeland, that being Mother England. In addition, I think you saw it, and I suppose many folks around the country saw it, and we're always looking for some feel-good stories, but the event that took place on the Disney cruise ship where a small child fell overboard and the father instantly jumped in from the 4th deck above sea level and made it to his daughter and stayed afloat out there until the Disney crew was able to get the rescue craft out there. It had to be a terrifying experience, but a true symbol of American manhood in my estimation. So I raise my glass to that individual as well.
Salute. Cheers to that, yeah.
So for our quote tonight, the secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is in keeping them ignorant. And that comes from Maximilien Robespierre. So one of the things that we here at the fourth box have long advocated for, and it was educating ourselves and us being a tool to help educate others, understand what those founding documents guaranteed for us. And it's up to us to really apply some effort in educating ourselves. If you remain ignorant and unaware of these things, I think it's an open door for tyranny, which I expect tonight as we get into our conversation will suggest that that is already in effect. So if we want to take back the liberty we're supposed to have, we need to be educated and not remain ignorant.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, using your quote and your initial toast, obviously, this is going to air July 3rd, the night before 4th of July. So, of course, we're going to, bring up that theme often. But, you speak about tyranny in your quote. And I think the piece that people forget when we think about the 4th of July is that what we're celebrating is rebels and outlaws and people who did not walk in step with everyone else who was just going along to get along, people who went outside of their comfort zone, people who sacrificed their their lives, their families' lives, everything they knew to go and stand in the face of tyranny. And it brought for us what we have had in this country for hundreds of years. And you and we talk about this every 4th of July, I think. It comes to mind when we see these people out and they're wearing their red, white, and blue, and all of a sudden there's this patriotism. And it's like, that's great, you should have that love of country. But do you in any way align with the mission of what we're celebrating? Do you align with what happened in 1776? Do you align with the people that did the job that they did to get us here today? Because that's great that for one day out of the year you cheer about it and we can all maybe kind of try to be on the same page for like 5 minutes and just calm down about everything else going on. That's great. I'm not disputing that. But until you recognize that to keep the freedom that they worked so hard for, you have to be the rebel, you have to be the outlaw, that is what we're celebrating, then it feels a little bit hypocritical to me.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, and it needs to be discussed. So many of us, as society at large, are just willing to march along. I think one of our guests over the last couple of weeks, he had a great term. I'm not going to remember it right now, but it had to do with complacency. And I think at large, society is very complacent. We do not recognize the threats around us to the very liberty that blood was spilled to achieve for us. And as you say, we can put on our red, white, and blue, and land of the free, and home of the brave, and all of these great things. But what are you doing to preserve that? And if
Right.
it's just lip service, and you don't recognize that the land of the free is, we are not free. Remember, free men don't need permits. That's just a very simple analogy you can take a look at to compare whether or not you truly are free. And I would suggest that we're not. We are living under a lawless government, and that is the same lawless government, whether it is headed up by a Republican or it's headed up by a Democrat. We do not have the freedom and the liberty to live our life as we choose up until the point that infringes on somebody else. We simply are so far removed from that. There are regulations, there are statutes, there are mandates on everything that we do from the time we get up in the morning until we lay our head down at night. And I suppose society at large is comfortable in the space we're in because somebody isn't kicking their door in yet.
Right.
But we are so far removed, and the celebration really seems almost pointless to me. And I think several of the 4th of July holidays over the last 20 years, I've kind of penned a piece really related to that. To me, it's an empty bark. It's a facade. It's really nothing behind it. But we can gather with family. We can gather with friends. We can celebrate the fact that we do have an opportunity to live in a place that's not being overrun. There's not bullets whizzing by every day, but being free and having personal liberty, we are very, very far removed from that. We live under a lawless government. Remember, the Constitution was written as a tool to contain government, not as a tool for government to contain we the people. That simply was not what it was for. It was the operating instruction, the book of procedures that was written for the purpose of managing those who would sit in our elected seats.
Exactly. Yeah, so just to go off on that further, because I do want to get into some stuff here, but I also want to talk about this because it just like rattles around in my head every 4th of July, this like theatrical performance everybody puts on, you know? It reminds me of what you always say, like bread and circuses. Like we do the parade and we rah, 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 and we have our barbecue. And it's like what you just said, land of the free, home of the brave. You brought up the point, we're not free. And I think people always dispute that. And I'll ask the listeners tonight, if you're free, if you believe truly in your heart that you are free, tell me in what way. Tell me in what areas of your life you're free. Because let's just make it real simple. Let's boil it down to one single issue, though there's many. Let's boil it down to just taxes. If you were free, you get a choice. Freedom is having a choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you were free, you could get to choose not to pay your taxes. Mm-hmm. You could get to choose that the, X amount of dollars that comes out of every single paycheck, you're choosing not to do because you have the freedom of choice. You have free will. Mm-hmm. You get to sign in to that if you want to do it. That's what freedom is. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about it in just that sense alone. Do you get to do that? When you bring your paycheck home every 2 weeks, do you get to say, no, I'm actually not going to be paying that. I feel that I would like to not contribute. No. You don't get to do that. And if you own your own business and you're not bringing a paycheck home, then you absolutely know all of the regulations that you have to be checking off and staying in compliance with just to stay up and running, even before you have to start thinking about taxes, which is a whole separate issue for you. So you're not free. If you think you are, dispute me. Send me an email. Tell me why. And you're not brave. Because I think when people hear home of the brave, everyone always thinks that's the military. Mm-hmm. They don't think about it as themselves. But when that tagline came out, land of the free, home of the brave, it meant all of us. Mm-hmm. Because at a certain point, everybody had to be brave to get us to where we are. And because we've stepped away from fighting for freedom, because we've stepped away from bravery, most people don't know what bravery is. Mm-hmm. Most fathers wouldn't have jumped off that cruise ship. Am I wrong? That's the world we're living in. So, tonight, sure, let's talk about some issues. Let's talk about some of the tyranny around us. But, really ask yourself, are you doing your part? Are you being brave for freedom? Because if you're not doing that, then why are you even going out and waving your flag tomorrow?
Precisely. As you led off this segment by mentioning the fact that those brave men and women who stood on the Lexington Green and later on at Bunker Hill and in New Jersey and all the places, Valley Forge, all the places that they displayed great bravery, but they were viewed as rebels and outlaws and people who were no longer compliant, going along with what they were being forced to do. They were saying no. And how many people stand up against anybody today? They could tell you, well, today it's 33%, next week it's 66% taxes. And the herd would plod along and say, well, that's correct. To your point about taxes, taxes were intended to pay for those very few things that government has delegated to it. And I'm speaking about at the federal level here, although there are plenty of issues at our own state level, but I'm speaking specifically at the federal level. Taxes were intended to be taken or were authorized to be taken only for those delegated things. So anything else that is being funded by the federal government that is not an enumerated authority is something that is being stolen away from you for an illegal activity, period, plain and simple. We've been saying this for 20 years, starting to hear some of the other radio show guys talking like this, but this is something we've been saying for a long time. If it is not compliant with the Constitution and you willingly kneel down and tolerate it without standing up and pushing back, this is the reason we do not have liberty today, because we simply have knelt down and gave it all back. We can all get out on the street and celebrate, and we should, the brave men and women who are wearing a uniform in this country today, hopefully not to be sent off to some other bullshit war that was created for the sole purpose of enriching the military industrial complex and the bankers behind them after they pound the drums. You know, many friends of ours, probably people that listen to this show, are all in complete agreement that the Iran bombing should have taken place. And maybe it should have. But you know what? It was done illegally. It was done unconstitutionally. There is a mechanism in place for declaring war. By the way, it hasn't happened since World War II. So every place that our young men and women have died, gone off to, and fought in the name of this country since World War II was an illegal activity because it was not done using the procedure that's put in place. That is what we have to start standing on. And the reason that is done is so that there are 535 people, that being 435 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate, that are to be deliberating these actions before we send our treasure and young people off to war. Never to be made by one person at the drop of a hat. And remember, as you pointed out in previous episodes, these were promises that were made. Hey, there's a lot that Trump has done that I am in favor of. There is a lot. But this activity was completely out of bounds. And we can roll right into the big, beautiful bill. If there are things, which there are lots and lots and lots of things in there that are being funded, expanding and growing the deficit, by the way, yeah, there's going to be some things cut out of there that probably should have never been in there to begin with, but the deficit is still growing. The debt is still growing. And in addition to that, most importantly, from my standpoint, there is a whole lot in 1,100 pages that there is no constitutional authority for, none. Therefore, it's an illegal activity. We can go through all of the gymnastics and tricks of the trade down there to get it through the Senate and hand it over to the House, and everybody can be beating each other up and threatening to campaign against those that speak out against it. These are the voices that we should be standing behind. These are the voices that are of clear head and saying, wait a minute, these are not the things that we are supposed to be doing, but instead, and the Republicans will rally around and knife these people in the back that are doing their due diligence and trying to get the country to stand up, say, wait a minute, slow down, there is no authorized authority for these things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look at Thomas Massey. He's still catching so much heat from everyone on our side. These people who, okay, yeah, maybe they're not mega, but they are in the GOP, and many of them have claimed to support Trump and Vance. And clearly they are if they're voting yes on this bill. And then they look at Thomas Massey and they act like he's the villain. And it's like, okay, you don't get to be MAGA. You don't get to say you're trying to make America great again. And then this guy, this one guy who's trying to stand up and say, I'm not voting for this. Not that he's the only one, but he is one that's catching like a lot of flack from people. You don't get to give him a hard time because he's actually trying to stand up for the American people and keeping us out of continued forever debt. Like one of the whole things we were excited about with Trump is that we thought we were going to take away the debt. Like, sure, run your mouth about all the good the tariffs are doing, but how is that any of that beneficial if you're just increasing the debt ceiling to the highest it's ever been by like a lot?
So you cut down some programs that may have largely been unfavorable or something that the Republicans disliked. You cut them out, but you still expanded spending by increasing other unconstitutional activities. This is the kind of crap that has led us to where we're at. This undying commitment and allegiance to one party or the other. We should have that undying commitment and allegiance to the founding documents, not to the red team or the blue team. They are both corrupt. They have stolen from all of us. They have stolen from future generations. How can any of us sit back and say, yep, I'm sure glad we passed that bill and handed a whole nother big load of debt down to our grandchildren and our great grandchildren, and it'll never be paid back. But somehow, because it was done by a Republican president, Republican Congress, we're going to stand up and cheer for our irresponsibility. It is all it is our generation doesn't want to bite the bullet and make some tough decisions, cut out some of this crap. We just keep building a bigger pile for some other generation to take care of. This is a disgrace. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I don't think many of us would pile up a huge amount of debt and hand it off to you, our children. We wouldn't do it personally. Why are we standing for it? Why are we standing for it from our national leaders? Intolerable. Absolutely a disgrace.
Well, yeah, exactly. The end result is the same, and I think people forget that. You just are saying, yeah, you wouldn't hand off a big load of debt to me or to Kendra or Brant. But this is the same result.
Yes,
it's
it
the
is.
Same result. I'm going to be paying off more of this debt. My children will be paying off more of this debt, and on and on and on. Like, it doesn't matter if it's you personally or if it's the people sitting in DC. The debt it's the same. In fact, it's just more debt. It's bigger debt than if it was just a personal issue. And the thing that's really been getting me is all the public land stuff. Okay, I'm excited about this. Don't get me wrong. I don't hear that I'm not excited about what people did. But this is the first time that I can recall that enough people banded together and took action, very small action. I'm literally talking about emails and phone calls, which we talk about every week. This is what people did. And I mean, effectively overnight, they had to pull that part out of the bill because they were going to sell off so many public lands to private entities. And obviously in the East, it doesn't really affect us a lot. We don't really see those public lands. I mean, it's very different from the West. The West, that's such a big part of your life. That's where you spend so much of your time. You can go out and you can look at these places that are, you know, are going to turn into some hellhole for some corporation. And it's obvious that you get angry about it. Yeah. And I think it's fantastic that so many people showed up in such a big way. It was not violent. There were not protests. There were not riots. They simply made their voices heard. And that whole part of the bill got taken out. That's amazing. That's fantastic. My issue is, where is that energy for everything else all the time, forever? Like, this is, I've never seen this happen. And there's so much shit people are mad about. So why can't we just keep that energy and like use it for everything else? Let's all decide tomorrow we're going to try and get this thing out of the bill. And the next day we'll try to get that thing out of the bill. And maybe, you know, it was 1,100 pages. Now it's 980 pages. And that's not much better. But okay, let's keep it up. Let's get it down to 50 pages. And then, yeah, maybe I won't mind if they vote yes on it. Because it won't be some insane bill that raises the debt ceiling to what, 3.3 trillion or something?
Yeah, that's another great point. And if we all took that time, took that energy, something that we have, you know, we've tried to coax our listeners into doing is taking some action. Just think if we all did that, called our congressmen and called our senators and say, vote no on the bill. Vote no on the bill for a whole plethora of reasons. You can cherry pick any of those things out of there that happens to be your personal favorite. But at the end of the day, say no. Do not vote for something that is going to heap more debt on the top of my children, hopefully my grandchildren, someday my great-grandchildren. Do not bury these people under our irresponsibility. And that's all it is. It is simply irresponsible for this generation to say, we're just going to burden the next 20 generations to take care of our mess because we did not have the stones to fix it ourselves. It's chicken shit. Now, to go back to your point on the national parks and national things and all of that, and I've mentioned it many times before. First of all, the federal government has no authority to do it. So, since they have held these grounds for a certain period of time, and in order to keep them safe for the public, I think it all should be turned back over to the state, only to be used for recreational purposes, never to be developed, and get the federal government out of the business of managing huge swaths of land because there is no constitutional authority for it. I know they've done another verbal gymnastics to come up with a way, because of the Louisiana Purchase or whatever these other things were, all that one aside. No, it did not. The Constitution does not get shoved aside just because an event took place.
Right.
Unless there is an amendment that changes the language thereof. And until that is, there's 10 square miles of Washington, D.C., and land that's been granted to the federal government for use as a military installation, period. That is all. So in order to protect those lands, I say turn them back over to the state, and the states have to maintain these areas as a recreational property, not to be developed for industry or residential or anything else. They have to be protected, but the states have to do it. It'll still be there. It'll probably be run a hell of a lot more efficiently.
Yeah.
But to your point, which is a fantastic one, if people can find a specific item within a huge bill, ridiculous chicken shit bill, and they can find something that can get them interested enough to call their congresspeople, call their senators and say no, then why aren't we doing it for the whole thing? Say, scrap this thing and get it whittled down to within the 18 specific authorities. There shouldn't be more than 18 things in that bill. As far as I'm concerned, there's only 18 authorities, and you've had 200 years to work on them. So if there's a tweak here or a tweak there to those 18 specific authorities, okay, that's what the bill should consist of. And not only that, it should be single issue bills. Yes. There's only 18 authorities. Write one at a time for each one of those. If something within that authority has to be modified or tweaked to keep up with the changing times, that is all. One issue at a time, not thousands of pages of gibberish. Nobody read it. Nobody understands it. A bunch of peons down in these folks' staff rooms have said, yeah, this looks good. No, that look. And that is how they decide. And it's spliced right down political lines. And you've got a couple in the middle that have enough courage to stand up one side or the other. The rest are a herd of sheep because they got their arm twisted up behind them, so they just go along with it, heaping more debt on our children. It is a disgrace.
Well, yeah, there's a couple things I want to go into here. And the first one is, this is the problem with the deep state. You can think about that term in many ways. You can think about it as some, underground elite society, or you can just think about it for what it objectively is, and no conspiracies involved. We have thousands of bureaucrats still sitting in DC. We have thousands of lobbyists for all sorts of organizations that we don't know what they're doing behind closed doors. It doesn't matter if every single person in one state calls, their representatives. It doesn't matter if they're completely bought out by some lobbyist group in DC. Because they're going to make so much money. They're getting bribed behind closed doors that they're like, sorry, constituents, it doesn't really matter. I don't care if you don't vote me in next term. This guy's going to give me X amount of dollars to vote yes. And that's what happens with all of these bills. And the thing is that they can twist somebody's arm on one issue. Okay, well, there's 70 issues in the bill. The only thing this guy cares about is getting this one little tiny detail passed for this one issue over here. It takes up a half a paragraph in the whole 980 pages. And now you're going to vote yes on the whole thing. And all this other stuff is going to go along for the ride, even though you really don't want to vote yes on those things. That's what happens. And that's the problem. Like, one, that's the problem with the bureaucracy. Two, that's the problem with these bills that are omnibus bills that we have no say in what's in them, and most of us don't know what's in them. I won't even pretend to know every single detail of this bill because I don't have the time to sit down and read 1,000 pages that's written in jargon that's not meant for me to understand easily. So it's all of that is a huge issue in and of itself, and until that gets resolved, there's not really anything we can do here, because frankly, these are the types of things that I thought were not going to be happening under Trump. I thought he was kind of like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. We're not doing the bureaucracy thing. I'm going to solve that problem. If you're claim to fame is draining the swamp, yet you're allowing an omnibus bill to go through, raise the debt by this much, have all these lobbyists pushing yes on issues that nobody else wants. You are not draining the swamp. You're perpetuating the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yep.
second thing I want to bring up here, I know you probably have something to go off there, but just going back to what you said about how they need to be single issues and how they also need to be within the confines of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the issues in the bill, or I shouldn't say issues, but one of the points in the bill is that I might not say the specific numbers correct, but I believe the funding of ICE will be raised from like 2 billion to 45 billion. Okay, hear me out. We know we have a border problem. We know we have an immigrant problem. We know that. And it's one of the key issues of this entire election. It's one of the key issues. It has been for the last several years. It's one of the main things that Trump promised to do when he got into office. If these things were presented in single issue bill format, that would get through easily. And yeah, it's $45 billion compared to two. Pretty big difference.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not thinking about all the other things, we're still saving a ton of money and we're still working within the confines of the Constitution because that is one of the delegated authorities.
Exactly.
So this is such a simple solution. Like, cut every issue into its own right now. Just cut up the bill into 50 different bills and vote on them individually. Problem solved tomorrow. Like, what is so hard about that, and why can they not do it? Like, what is the sneaky little thing happening that they can't do this? I don't understand.
They don't want to do it, but you really set me up for some nice comments here, and I want to come back to that last part. But before, I want to go back to some things you were talking about a few minutes before, and this is the beauty of what the founders created for us. Everybody sits back down after they raise hell about the possibility of some of the national parks and national lands being sold off to private entity. Everybody sits back down. But the beauty of this system was we can change out Congress every 2 years. And guess what? It was intended to happen.
Right.
This is where if a bill gets pushed through that is full of garbage like this thing is, and there are some good things in there, as you just pointed out, that are within the delegated authorities. But there is mostly garbage in there that the federal government has absolutely no authority to be meddling in. You know what? We, the people, can change out the whole mess every 2 years. Now, keep in mind, according to the written instructions, the written rule book, that being the Constitution, any bill that requires spending at the federal level has to be initiated in the House. We get to change the House every 2 years. Why do we keep putting these same criminals back in office? Put somebody in, anybody in. They cannot do any worse. Think about it. These people have just heaped hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt on every single man, woman, and child in this country. And we're standing around here cheering because it was a Republican Congress and president. This is insanity. We should be changing these people out every 2 years. And if the senators happen to get that bill after the House tolerates it and lets it go, and they push it through, then do the same thing with the senators. Why are these people in there for 30, 40, 50 years? I love the idea of saying until Congress balances the budget, we should throw every single one of them out every single election until they get it right. Put somebody in there that is balancing the budget, not building more debt, not dumping this load of crap on our children and grandchildren. Should not be happening. All right, so now go back to the last point you were just talking about, because I had a thought there and I lost it when I want to.
The illegal immigration portion, and if we split it into single bills, and obviously, you know, in this particular big beautiful bill, they're bumping from 2 billion to 45 billion for ICE.
Yes.
Blah blah blah.
Yes, and again, what I wanted to try to highlight was the wisdom and the foresight of the founding fathers. They developed this system where we could rotate these people out, and they developed this system that specifically spelled out the authorities, delegated. If the power's not delegated, think about your 10th Amendment. This is why it's important for everybody to understand these documents. The 10th Amendment says the power's not delegated to the federal government, belong to the states and or the people. That means delegated has to be specifically spelled out as something that we want the federal government to be taking care of. And if it is not there, they have no business weighing in on it. None. Zero. For example, 2 days ago, horrible event up there in Idaho.
Yeah.
Some guy loses it. Whatever the background of that story is, lights a fire, and when the fireman arrives, he starts blasting firemen, shooting firemen and firefighters. Terrible event.
Yeah.
And the first thing you hear is we're sending the FBI in. What the hell's the FBI got to do with it? The FBI, first of all, shouldn't exist. If it does exist, it should only be investigating activities related to the laws that the federal government has the authority on. We all stand back and clap. Oh, the FBI is going out. The FBI has no authority there, none.
Right.
It's a state issue that it did not cross state lines. It did not incur one of these things where the federal government may have authority. It should only be investigating those things that are affected by the 18 delegated authorities. But we're sitting here watching that idiot box, and everybody bows down and thinks somehow that the FBI is the biggest, baddest thing going. A bunch of punks that go, pretending to be part of the J6 mob and incite, this is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that's going on by our own government. It's weaponized against us, and they make a big splash by making a grandiose announcement that they're going out to help out with the Idaho investigation of that shooting. They have no business out there, none.
Right.
There was no federal. It was not a federal event of any kind. It wasn't something that infringed upon any area that the federal government has authority in. So what the hell are they doing there? It's grandstanding. It's doing something that they should not. Oh, now guess what they'll be doing next month? They'll be looking for more money. It should not. And we, the people, have allowed ourselves to be so dumbed down, so uneducated, so unaware of how this system's supposed to work that we sit back and clap for the chains being clapped on our ankles. We are cheering the bondage that we're in.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. You talk about how we've become so dumbed down, and as a society, we're just no longer educated on any of these things, any of the tools that we have. And one of them, we talk about how term limits should be a thing. Yes, we should have term limits, but guess what? If we use the tool provided to us, we already have term limits.
100%. Yep.
Like, wake up to that. We do not need... Okay, here's my thing with that. It's like how, you take like a toxic can of paint and you have to put a big label on it. Do not eat it. Because there are so many people who, if you do not spell it out for them, they'll just eat it. And I'm like, that's the same. That's the same as with term limits. Because if we do not spell out, it's like you have to go hold the hand of every single person who's going in to vote. Hey, you can vote that guy out. Remember how you didn't like the stuff he did for the last 2 years? Just vote him out. And you don't have to vote for the Republican guy if you're a Republican, and you don't have to vote for the Democrat guy if you're a Democrat. But people don't know this. They just don't know it. And my thing is if we all just agreed to just vote for whoever's not in every time, the problem would go away.
Absolutely.
Because people couldn't be in there long enough to become corrupt. And it wouldn't matter if the person was a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or from the Green Party or they made up their own party. It wouldn't matter because at least it's a new person and he's not corrupt by a system and he hasn't been in there long enough to be bought out. And by the time he figures out that he can, he's gone. Bring the next guy in. That is so easy to fix.
Just think about this. A congressman. So we have a fairly large here in central Pennsylvania. We have a fairly large congressional district. Just think if everybody from all the different little municipalities within that district went out and wrote somebody in from their hometown. Well, whoever had the biggest hometown and the person that was from that hometown that was the most well-known, he happens to get elected. You know what? It cannot be any worse than putting the same skunk criminal thieves, liars back in. Have everybody go down and write somebody in. Do not put the people in that are standing with a major party behind them.
Right.
All the money, all the corruption is already in place. Go down and write your neighbor in. If the guy wins and he's got 100 votes, oh well.
Yeah.
That would be better than what we have, a criminal who's already corrupted, if not by the Jewish lobby, if not by the big pharma lobby, if not by the big military industrial complex lobby, the big bank lobby. He's owned by somebody. Why do we keep putting these people back in and hoping that somehow this is going to change? It ain't going to change.
Right.
We have to change it. This is the peaceful mechanism by which we have. Every 2 years, roll them out. And every bill that requires spending has to be initiated in the House. And if you change them people out every 2 years, maybe we'll apply some sanity back to this process.
Exactly. Exactly right. We talk about the 4 boxes. This is one of them. This is the ballot box. And when we say the ballot box is a tool and it is one of the ways that you keep your liberty, we don't mean you just vote in the Republican guy or the Democrat guy. Because exactly what you just said, so spot on. If you see their signs all over town, if they have billboards, if they're on the TV, they're bought out. Mm-hmm. Where do you think all this money came from? They have millions of dollars.
Yep.
They're bought off by somebody.
They're not looking out for you.
If you see them on the TV, they don't get your vote, period. Just vote for anyone else. Like, that literally fixes the problem. And that's what kills me. Like, that is the tool of the ballot box.
Yes, it is.
We have the tool to put anybody in there. We have the tool to put somebody in there who doesn't want to be in there, who, by the way, is the better choice.
Yep. Absolutely right. All right, so we're gonna slide into the lightning round here because we're coming up on 45 minutes, and we're gonna slide into the lightning round. We're gonna throw up some topics. We're gonna offer a sentence or two remark and try to move through a couple of them quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So first of all, Act Blue is coming under scrutiny. You might recall that's a left-leaning fundraising arm. Coming under scrutiny for shady fundraising, foreign influence, money laundering through USAID and NGOs. All right, my remarks would be, nobody should be surprised. And what the hell took so long? We have Kash Patel. We have all these people who are supposed to be turning the house upside down. What the hell took so long? Let's get after it. I want to see people being perp walked.
Yeah. Completely agree with that. We need that to be happening. It's a non-negotiable. Again, this is something we voted for. Not sure if you saw this in relation to this. I saw a news headline: U.S. aid cuts may cause over 14 million additional deaths by 2030. We're reaching. Yeah. And this is how we trick the population into thinking that these things are bad.
Yep.
And that we should be in favor of them, and we shouldn't be cutting funding for things like this because we put bullshit headlines out there. And you want to talk about misinformation? Like, this is misinformation. This is bad information. This is a lie, and it is based in absolute nothingness.
Yeah.
Just to try and get your argument across. So Again, we don't have to go into it too far. I know we want to touch on a couple other things, but like, come on, guys, really?
Yeah, if you hear if Hollywood movie stars and the rest of the ilk are promoting this sort of topic, you should be able to see through it and understand that somebody's blowing sunshine up your arse to try to get you follow their lead. Okay, Zohran Mamdani was nominated as a Democrat candidate for the city of New York, the mayor seat in the city of New York. He's an avowed socialist. Muslim, which doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but he is an avowed socialist, self-anointed socialist. What's your thoughts about this?
God, this is a tough one for me because I feel like this guy is the next level of bringing trouble into government, and he really speaks to the younger crowd, the crowd that we're talking about. We think is waking up a little bit. But if you're in New York City, honestly, it doesn't even matter. Like, you're brainwashed no matter what. Even if you're a Republican in New York City, you're probably way more Democrat than most Democrats in other states. Let's just be honest. You
Mm-hmm.
probably are you have socialist leanings already. However, the problem with this is that New York is such a hub for so many industries in this country that there will be a trickle down effect because of the policies that are instilled there if this guy does get into office. I also think that his messaging is inherently anti-American. I mean, being a socialist is anti-American. So
Mm-hmm.
all of the people who are latching on to his messaging are buying into these ideas of anti-Americanism, anti-patriotism, even if they don't realize that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought this point up to you while I was home last week. One of the things with Iran when we bombed them for some insane reason, okay, I mean, obviously people have their feelings on that. I think that was the wrong choice. Doesn't matter what my opinion is on that. A lot of people were saying that they were like a very short-term threat. Oh, they always chant death to America. And my thing with that is that half the people in this country chant death to America.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, most of them are probably the people that are voting for this guy in New York City. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about that what you want.
So I just had a quick comment, follow up on that. In 2021, public statement from this individual was that his goal is to seize the means of production, which, if you happen to understand and have ever read the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto and the planks of the manifesto, that is number 7 within the Communist Manifesto. He has made other statements that are solidly grounded in the Communist Manifesto. So I think one of the underlying things that we all have to recognize is because young people's minds have been watered down by an education system that has crammed socialist ideals into their head for the last 50 or 60 years, we are now seeing the fruits of that come to pass, where we are cheering on an avowed socialist or communist leading a major city, one of the most significant cities in the financial world and otherwise in the world. And this person has been nominated as a Democrat candidate and therefore will most likely win.
Right.
Okay. This is an unreal one as well. CNN is now promoting an app which tracks the movement of ICE agents for the purpose of warning illegals.
Oh, God. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of issues that come along with this. Like, we start getting into tracking individuals. We are so into the 1984 novel that it's not even funny. And obviously, there's so many things that are pointing to this. Again, look at Big Beautiful Bill. There's a lot of weird stuff about AI in there. Don't love that. But like, this is all getting too creepy and it's happening too fast. And eventually, all of these things can be used against you. If you're the Democrat that's like, yeah, hooray, this is awesome, this is going to protect illegals, like, this can just as easily be turned on you. Or you can turn around and turn it on your neighbor. Like, This is not okay. None of this is okay. We're crossing so many lines. And tell me where any of that is allowed in the Constitution.
Yeah, exactly. So again, to our earlier point, talking about illegals and all the rest of it, this is a federally delegated, authorized function to maintain a secure border and a uniform code of naturalization. So this is a duty that we have tasked upon the federal government. So basically, anybody who is assisting and abetting, aiding and abetting those who sneak their way into this country illegally, because it is a violation of immigration law, so they are therefore in the act of committing a crime, and you have people who are assisting them avoid apprehension, they are assisting and complicit in that crime. I think there ought to be charges brought up against anybody that's involved with that kind of activity.
Totally.
Okay. Another one from the lightning round I wanted to talk on briefly. You heard a lot about sanctuary cities during the Biden years. I think even early as the Obama years, you may have heard things about sanctuary cities where these people could come and be protected by city or state governments. Just a point of reference, the same thing applies that we just said related to CNN offering, tracking of ICE agents. This is a federally delegated authority. This is a task that has been placed at that level. And if you are a part of a city government that is offering yourself up as a sanctuary to stand in between an illegal and the federal government, I think they all need to be arrested. I am not for giving federal government any more authority than what was delegated, but this was one that was delegated. And if you are interfering with the execution of those authorities and those responsibilities, then you too should pay the price for aiding and abetting criminal activity.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I think people know this by now on our show. Our messaging is consistent. We want to stick to the Constitution. That's it. That's literally it. It doesn't have anything to do with like, I don't care what people's views are on illegal immigrants in this country. I personally know how I feel, but I don't care what other people's opinions are. The point is that what the Constitution says is this, and so that's what we should stick to. And yes, they are way outside of the bounds on a lot of other issues. Our goal is to get people aware of those other issues so we can rein them back in everywhere else. But with this one thing, yeah, they do have that authority. Go ahead and do it.
Okay. Another one related to illegals. It was part of the big, beautiful bill. I don't know how it was parsed out or what have you, but I did note that Senator Collins from Maine, of all things, was in support of continuing to provide Medicaid for illegals. And I think others were too. And I think to the point that instead of that being defunded, I think it's going to wash through as it existed. So when you think about the burdens that are being passed down to our children and our future posterity, that being insurmountable amounts of debt that they are going to be shackled to for all of their lives. And guess what? The only way to rectify the problem is to increase taxes. Hopefully somewhere somebody down there grows a backbone and starts cutting back on spending, but we're still increasing the spending. So the only way you can keep up, even with the increase, is to increase taxes, let alone catch up and start paying it down. So anybody that is standing in opposite or in favor of a continuous stream of benefits to people who have snuck their way into this country illegally, this is what we're up against. This is what the big lobbies are having your representatives. If they were representing you, do you think they would be saddling you with paying for somebody who snuck their way into this country and never put a dime into the system? But your elected officials are doing it. They need to all be thrown out. Every single one of them. They're criminals. They have tolerated criminal activity and they participated in it. We have to do our job and root them the hell out of there. All of them.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier in the show tonight, I have not seen changes that I want to see. What happened to talk about dismantling or significantly reducing the IRS? What happened to the Fort Knox gold audit? What happened to the Department of Education? I heard that was going to be taken apart, and other unconstitutional government agencies. I heard Kristi Noem is being investigated currently for funds that have mysteriously ended up in her war chest. How have we bettered ourselves if these are still the things that are going on? I want to see Fauci being perp walked. I want to see Christopher Wray being perp walked. I want to see the Clintons being perp walked. I want to get to the bottom of the Seth Rich thing and all of this noise. And I sometimes I wonder if that's what the whole Iran thing was. Instead of getting done the promises, we're going to break a promise and go do something. But we're going to get the country all standing on its feet for the 4th of July as we cheer for bombing Iran that was not doing anything to us and cheering on the big beautiful bill that we just got crammed down our throat, saddling our children and future grandchildren with burdens that they'll never be able to get out from under. Why are we cheering?
Yeah. So the one thing I want to say about this is that you may have seen that Elon Musk has been posting a lot in favor of Thomas Massie. He is very much willing to support and fund him in any way for campaigns in the future. And I think that, people have a lot of bad things to say about Elon Musk, but what I would say is that be more like Elon Musk in this situation. Jump ship. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be 100% allegiant to a man. That's the opposite of what you are supposed to be doing in the land of the free, the home of the brave. Your allegiance is not to the man.
That's exactly right.
At all. You have a duty to your family, your children, this country. That's what you have a duty to protect and to
Yep.
act, in favor of. You do
Yep.
not have to stand with Trump just because of X, Y, and Z and because he looked like the right guy. Again, there are things he's done that I like. I'm not saying, oh, I'm super anti-Trump. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't agree with you on every single thing. Why should I agree with him?
Yep.
And I'm not going to pretend to. I'm not going to be like, well, I voted for Trump, so I'm okay with this. No. Way more on board with what Thomas Massey and people like him have to say in this situation. And if everyone else was just honest about those things and brave enough to say their own thoughts out loud and speak their opinions, these problems would go away. We just have to start being brave. I mean, this is so ridiculous that we're even having this conversation. I thought we would be so far past dealing with a bill like this. And yet here we sit. It's the same problem that we had, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's the same bullshit.
Yep. If it adds 1 penny of debt, it is no good. Why? How does it become any better if it adds more to the debt? Because a Republican did it? We have got to quit being led around by the nose like a bunch of sheep, which is what this country is. I'm sorry, folks. We have turned into a bunch of sheep. Why are we cheerleading for unconstitutional activity just because it happens to be a Republican now that's doing it? If we stood on the principles that our forefathers stood on, and we stood on the mechanisms that they had to control bad government, if you're out of line, you're out of line. You do not have a right to conduct unconstitutional activity just because you're a Republican and I happen to like a couple of things you've done. It's still out of bounds. You don't get that reign. We have to reel it back in. And, as we've talked many, many times, I hate to say it. I truly hate to say it, but I think we're down to the fourth box. I think we have had at our fingertips the soapbox, the ballot box, and the jury box for 250 years to keep this criminal activity by our elected officials reined in. We have not done it. So we're going to keep hoping and praying and pushing to use these other boxes. But in my heart of hearts, I do not believe that there is a bloodless way out of this mess. I don't believe it.
Well, the thing is, there becomes a time where it's too late for the fourth box too. At a certain point, there's nothing else to be done, and we're past the point of decline and we've hit the bottom and we just wait until the storm is over. And frankly, I don't know. I don't know if I would know when we hit that point, because it could be happening right now. We could already be at the bottom. It could already be too late. And again, this is not us suggesting that is the answer. I can't reiterate that enough. The point is just that we haven't been able to figure out how to use the other three boxes.
Yeah. So, I think I've mentioned it on earlier podcasts. Alexander Tytler, I think was his name, Scottish professor back around the time of the American Revolution, maybe even a little bit before, and he had studied some of the other republics and some of the other democracies, as they were called, but a form of government where people have some opportunity to influence their leaders and all those things. And he had made the observation that people will always end up in bondage, and I would suggest that we're in bondage. If somebody is taking your paycheck and taking 30 or 35% of it away, and they're giving it to somebody who is not working, then you are the slave. So I'm going to suggest that we're already in the early stages of bondage. But this man's observation was, and remember, this was 250 plus years ago. He said people will always end up in bondage, and from bondage, after you were in bondage and living in those conditions long enough, you gain great spiritual courage. And from great spiritual courage, you win back your independence. And once you win back your independence, you become prosperous. And then once you become prosperous, you become complacent. Things are coming easy. You become apathetic. Eventually, you become dependent. And from dependency, you're right back into bondage. So that is the cycle that historically has gone on through the great civilizations down through history, as pointed out by the Scottish professor out of Edinburgh back in around the founding of this country. And we are either at the bottom or nearing the bottom. We're in a dependency bondage phase where many of us are already in bondage and many others are already in the dependency phase. So we are at close to the bottom of this thing, where at some point, by the grace of God, we'll win back some spiritual courage and the cycle will begin anew. So
Yep.
That's what I had for the lightning round tonight, Bree.
That's good. Yeah, I was going to say that feels like a good thing to end it on, especially going into the 4th of July. A little bit of like a depressing episode for Independence Day, talking about us being dependent on our governing overlords. But hopefully it's a kick in the ass to motivate you to go out and do your part and to call the people near you and make your voice heard, because we talked about earlier in the show, it can happen. We've seen it happen just within the last couple weeks. I mean, these things take very little pressure to get the change to happen. But if we're not applying the pressure at all, then we have no excuse. There's nothing we can bitch about. It's very little effort on our part. We just have to take the step and do it. So I hope for this Independence Day, you celebrate by telling your elected officials that you don't like the bullshit that they're doing anymore.
Yeah. I agreed 100%. So in order to close on a positive note, we will recognize and remember all the many brave men and women who have done their very best wearing the uniform of this country, trying to make sure that the freedom that was won by our earliest patriots, the founders and that generation, provided for us the liberty and the freedom that we should all be fighting for. So we're going to salute those brave men and women around the country, around the world, that are still wearing the uniform, doing their very best to make sure that we have an opportunity to live free. Now, we got to do our part and take a step to do the very same thing. And before we do sign off tonight, I got a little bit of my McConnell's Irish whiskey left. And I'm going to raise my glass tonight to your younger brother, my youngest child, Brant, who has been trekking across the country for the last 6 days now. And hopefully tomorrow he will be making it to Alaska, where he will be taking up residence with his lovely fiancee, Ramsey. And I lift my glass to them and the wonderful adventure that they have had over the last week, making their way across the country up to Alaska. So I hope you get a chance to look at it, Brant, but here's to you.
Absolutely. Cheers, for sure.
Okay, should I close with a verse?
Yep, I'm ready if you are.
Okay, so blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he chose for his inheritance. From heaven, the Lord looks down and sees all mankind. From his dwelling place, he watches all who live on the earth. And that is Psalm 33, verses 12, 13, and 14.
There we go. We're looking for great spiritual courage, people.
Awakening.
Don't you forget it.
Absolutely. All right, Bree. Great show tonight. I know you had a very busy day. We filled that hour up pretty easily, as we usually do.
For sure. Yeah. Well, happy 4th of July to all of our listeners. We hope that it's a good one, though we were a little bit of a downer this evening. We do hope that you have a blessed and happy 4th of July and get to enjoy some of the little freedom that we have left.
Amen. And until we see you again, stay vigilant.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.